Great employee, richness, excellence, motivation, always hands. Welcome to the Great Employees Matter podcast. My name is Jimmy Bingham. We are here today with my partners, Kobe Dumas and Lloyd Dix. We are looking forward to another great podcast where we talk about things that affect employees and employers. As our responsibility is to help employees grow from average to great by giving them skill sets, the personal development tools to recognize their value and accentuate it. We work with employers to let them know that their most important asset is, in fact, their employees. And so we teach employers how to take care of their employees. Today we have a phenomenal guest. She's going to be a little bit different than the guests that we've had in the past. Her name is Colette Kemp. She's the founder of SureStep Business Advisors. It's a little boutique business brokerage. They're dedicated to helping baby boomer business owners transition their businesses to the next generation. Do his magic, and then we'll hop right into our interview with Colette Kemp.
As always, I want to welcome everybody to Great Employees Matter today. We got a great show planned for you, so please share, subscribe, engage in the chat with us. We will be checking that out. I think we try to get the questions as they come up, but if we won't miss any, and we'll go back and do reviews at the end. So please engage with us. And with that, I want to get right to it and get right into the show. This is going to be a great show. Colette, how are you today? Hopefully everything's going, and welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm very pleased to be here. It's nice to see you all.
Awesome. The first question I'm going to ask you is, can you just share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to launch your business, SureStep Business Advisors? I think that's an important place to start.
Sure. I emigrated to America quite a long time ago from the UK. And on my journey from being an employee myself into being an employer, I was a stewardess on private yachts. And I teamed up with an engineer and co-founded an engineering company. We grew that business we had about 50 employees and 50 subcontractors operating at any time. So it was very busy. I was the operator of that business. And from there, I actually stepped out of that business, grew it, and I was looking for a business to buy. I was persuaded by a business broker I was working with that I would be very good at brokering. And in conjunction with that, I went to train under him. And in conjunction with that, my father, actually, he's a baby boomer. He was getting close to retirement age, and he didn't realize that he could sell his business, and he made the decision to close it. And that ended up being a really big regret at an age where I don't feel like you should have those regrets when you've worked 30 years at your business. So I had trained under a broker, and I decided to found my own brokerage firm to help baby boomer business owners to avoid this and either find a next generation buyer or look internally to find that buyer. So that's why I'm doing
So,
it.
so you recognize something that happened within your own environment, your dad in this case, and decided to create a company to prevent it for others.
Yes, that's correct. So,
Okay.
because generally in business brokerage, if you're working with another broker or for another broker, you're either in a very specific niche or you are a generalist servicing different types of businesses. But I really wanted to be able to service a specific type of business owner, and it's somebody from the age of 60 to 80. So, in order to do that, I had to create my own business.
And prior to that, just from a little bit of your background, you led a 50-person engineering company before becoming an advisor. What encouraged you or inspired you to step away from that? That had to be a great and a massive role, but a great role to have.
So it was such a fulfilling experience. I did it for 15 years. I co-founded the business. It was two of us that started. And I have to say that one of the reasons that I'm appreciative of being here is that I really believe in employees. When I first started my own business, I was a really bad micromanager. And I had to go through some training. So I signed up to get my own business coaching. And I did that for a couple of years and I became better. Now, when I grew the company, I also was in a relationship with my business partner. And I was in a very male environment. And being a bit younger than I am now, I wanted to be treated equally. I worked as hard as he did. So eventually, once we built the company and it was stable, I decided that I would probably step out and just look to grow more. I had a much larger learning curve than him as an owner, and I almost grew with the employees, whereas he was the talent, the skill, and he was never going to go into any other sectors or do any other type of business. So that was why I stepped out. And then we actually got married after that. So it's all worked out well, and it's a little bit unique.
Yeah, that's really unique because a lot of times relationships and business don't mix well, but you did a great job at it. Well, I want to rewind back a little bit. You say that your partner, and let's go back a little bit. Where do you hail from? Where do you live in? Where are you from?
So I'm originally from London, England.
Okay. And now are you
Now I'm
still
in
in England?
the No, I'm in the mid-Atlantic region of the US in the Virginia, North Carolina border, and I moved recently from Florida. So if anybody that has worked on yachts or been employed on yachts will end up in Fort Lauderdale. It's the yachting capital of the world. And that's where I started my business.
Okay. So we're backing up like where I like to start at. What actually got you inspired into even doing that? That sounds like a unique start as well to just get into the yachting world. That's something that I wouldn't even think about. I live on the West Coast. We don't have very many yachts on the Inland Empire where I was from. But what made you take that route? Did that happen right after high school or after school?
No, so that was so in London. I didn't go to college. I didn't take the education route. So England is a little bit different from America. In my opinion, America is still the land of opportunity. England is a little different. We have a very structured class system. So I decided that I wasn't going to go to university, so I was going to travel. And so through my travels, I lived in the Middle East, I traveled all over. And then I eventually, in a lovely little bar in met some crew who needed a stewardess. And I think I was 21 at the time. And I joined that yacht and I took that job. And then from there, I ended up working in that industry for 8 years on different private yachts.
All right, so P, this is going to let me go ahead and segue it over to Jimmy because he's looking at me like I'm taking too much time already. Oh, I'm joking. But anyway, this is exactly what I like to pull out of people because you didn't go the education route. Some people think that's devastation, but I don't. I think that you find your way. It's good for some people. It's not good for some people. So you definitely went and you decided to start traveling so that you could explore. You found somebody in a bar, ended up working in that same environment for 8 years and created a company out of that. I think that's incredible. And with that, I'm gonna bounce it over to Jim.
Amazing. Before I get to the meat of the matter, so were you ever in below deck? Like,
No, and thankfully I don't watch TV, so I don't know what that looks like. But no.
oh, okay. I've never seen the show itself. A former employer of mine had a really good friend who ended up being on the show, and
Ah,
he's an interesting character. So I feel sorry for the crew that was managing the yacht at the time. All right, we're going to evolve into a discussion about what you actually do for businesses. I'm particularly intrigued by it because, as you can see my caption, my name is Jimmy Boomer Bingham. So I'm clearly of the boomer generation. And at 68, I'm supposed to be retired, but Lloyd wouldn't let me. Lloyd and his wife said, nope, you got to keep working. So I'm working. So before we get into discussions about how you help businesses do their evaluation and really posture themselves so that they get the maximum that they can get. They make the right decisions about how they sell. They make a decision about whether they have a legacy that they're going to pass on to family or friends who are involved in the business, or if they're going to go sell it to their employees or create an ESOP type of situation, an employee stock option plan type of situation. And Lloyd will speak to that with you when we get to that point. But before we do that, can you share with us what was your biggest challenge regarding employees as you were building your engineering company?
so my biggest challenge was, and this is something that I think about even currently. My biggest challenge was as we grew, I was a big believer in promoting from within. And the very first time that I promoted, so we were a blue collar business. we were doing ship repair, marine engineering, and we had a lead technician just naturally grew into a lead that we wanted to develop. And we promoted him to a manager, and he was our first manager. And I was shocked at how much he struggled. I wasn't prepared for that. I was, yay, you're going to be a manager. And I think this happens to salespeople sometimes. They're promoted to a sales manager, but they've been a salesperson. So we promoted him, and I've had to then figure out, okay, how are we going to give him the most support? Because I underestimated how hard it was going to be for him to be with his peer group and then step into a role where he was then leading his peer group, telling them what to do, and he didn't want to do it. So I had to figure out how to get the best out of him, because we had put him in a situation that we maybe hadn't prepared him for properly. Would have been my biggest challenge. It was one of my first ones.
So you were able to overcome that. Did you change his role, or did you just support him within his role?
No, we did not change his role, because that's absolutely where he should have been. But what we had to do was then realize that we needed systems, we needed processes. So I went to work on that. As we grew a little bigger after that situation, we actually did bring in an outside HR consultant to help us to grow in a healthy way. Because you can create a lot of dysfunction without meaning to, especially as you go from 5 to 10 to 15. And then as you get up to 20, if you don't have systems and processes, you're just going to have complete chaos. And your people are going to be miserable. Your team, they're going to leave you. So fortunately, we were able to work. He was very patient with us. So we were able to grow together with him.
Fabulous. The fact that you were open, that you and your partner, your business partner, were open to having that type of a mindset, as opposed to getting frustrated and just throwing that employee out with the bathwater or changing his role significantly. It's a credit to you to be able to be aware enough and flexible enough to make those types of adjustments. So that's great. Okay, so for the next little while, can you tell us about SureStep and how your advisors really work with companies to do the magic that you do?
As you said, it's a boutique firm. So we're a new business. It's the way that we help people. So there's several things. We build relationships with people, first of all, to help educate them on how they can sell their business to their ideal buyer. This is a little bit different. So we're not a business that has tons and tons of clients at one time. It's very specialized. And I almost use a recruitment process. So when I had to recruit a lot in my previous business, I would build out an ideal candidate form, and we actually were able to recruit the right types of people using this process. So this is something that I'll do with my clients. I'll typically, I won't be working with everybody because I have a very specific niche. So I do have a network of other business brokerage firms that we can refer to, but I will help the owners to really get clear on what they want. And then when we make a plan to move towards what they want, I also keep reminding them about what they want, because people can get very wishy-washy. Once you have the business listed, even if you had a firm idea of what you want that sale to look like, it can be tempting then to just start accepting any of queries that come in and getting a little off track. So I like to keep them on track with, remember, this is the outcome that we're trying to reach. And then being there for them and helping to absorb all their emotions, because it's very hard. There's so much to it. There's so much to preparing a business to sell and selling a business.
Not knowing your marketing strategy or your approach, my supposition would be that with some regularity, you probably run into business owners that don't know what all their options are, right? They might come in with nothing at all. To say, hey, yeah, we'd like to talk to you, Colette. We're thinking about selling our business in 10 years. What do we need to do to prepare? That's somewhat of an ideal client for you, I would think. But then you're going to have people that come in and say, I know that I want to sell my company to a third party. And then in your intake and review process, I'm sure you share with them what all the options are, that you may want to consider selling it to your employees. You may want to go through an M&A and dispose your company that way and keep your hand in it for some short time. Is that incorrect? assumption that you have prospective clients that aren't aware of what their options are? And if that's the case, how do you educate them?
So the biggest thing I think that people are unaware of is what their business is worth. That's always the real, I just have no idea. But let's say if we go beyond that, people do tend to know at least what they don't want. So I worked with a couple that were 79 at the time, and they knew what they didn't want. They didn't want to sell to a board investor, as they saw it,
Mm,
who was just going to come in and want to just go in once a week. They worked in an industry that was very sensitive, the type of clients that they were servicing. So they actually they knew they wanted somebody to come in and care about the business. So they'll have an idea of what they want. Valuation, definitely not. I have no idea. So we get that part done. But usually because they know the business, they know their clients, they have a rough framework. I can just help to fill in I can almost fill in the gaps for them. If they don't want to sell to an investor, then I know that's private equity out. And then they have to be a certain size to sell to private equity. So that could be out anyway. So just helping them to understand the types of buyers that are out there, because those tend to fall into certain buckets and can be repetitive.
sure. Okay. Very good. Lloyd, you have a few questions for Miss Colette?
I do. Hearing your story of the employee that you promoted to leader, and he had difficulty. That reminds me of the book, Peter Principle, which came out in 1969. What do you do with an employee that you've promoted to a level of incompetency?
Yeah. And the thing is, you put them there as well.
Right.
It's so many things. I feel like I was very fortunate because I started my business and I had no idea what I was doing. I did maybe what a lot of people do when they have a business is I overcompensated. I just worked really hard. I worked for 15 years. I took no vacations. I was in there from 6 a.m. till 8 p.m. But you have to do that. I think if you're going to have good people, you just have to work with them. You can't and sometimes I knew I was doing it wrong, and even if I was frustrated, like I always knew it was on me. I think I have a over responsibility gene, but that's good because it's not on them. And I think there's nothing worse as well. So when you do put somebody in a role, and people aren't silly, they figure out, okay, you've put me here. Now what? So you have a responsibility to that person.
Absolutely. When it comes time for the sale and the owner of the company comes to you and decides that they want to sell, at what point in time do you tell the employees that the company is going to be up for sale? A lot of people are looking for that balance. They don't want their employees to mass exit. They want to keep them on at the same time they owe them something. And so they do want to give them notice.
And that's a really tricky one, Lloyd, because the employees are very valuable. The team is what creates the value in the business. So, one, you certainly don't want to pull the rug out from under them. There's two sides to it, right? The business owner can't risk telling people prematurely and then they get scared, they leave. Because how is that communicated to an employee? Hey, we're thinking about selling the business, but don't worry, you're going to be okay. That doesn't, I always just it's so from what I have seen work, there's sometimes there's a key person that can be trusted, but I just think you have to be really careful. Like it depends on the relationship because you can really spook the employees.
I've seen situations where a lot of times if there's a key employee or a couple of key employees, the owner will go to them and tell them and couple that with some kind of incentive to upon the sale. Is that common?
Yes, so that is a situation that I have gone through and it is helpful. There was a compensation package tied to the business selling where that can cause a little bit of and I guess it would be more for the business owner side. Where that can cause a little bit of concern is for the buyer because salaries, they're looking at the salaries. Sometimes employees have been at a company for a long time and they're a wee bit underpaid. So the new owner is going to have to adjust that salary to make sure they stay. And then of course, if there's been a nice bonus post sale or for staying, how do they know the employee is not going to leave when they get that bonus? So there's a dance. There's definitely lots of intricate communication that has to take place.
So there's Sure Step. I'm sorry to separate you, Lloyd, but
No
so
problem.
there's Sure Step business advisors. Do your advisors then provide that advice for the transition and tell the business owner the best tactics given their particular situation, the best strategy to use when communicating with the employees?
So the responsibility for the business broker, we have to be careful that we're not directing the transaction. So we are there to assist and facilitate everything, but we have to we need to tell the owners about their options, that make sure that they're the ones making the decisions. So many times, and business owners, they'll speak to friends who have sold their business. They'll have ideas, and we can maybe suggest what we've seen in the past. But as far as the management of the employees and how that's handled, we can make suggestions. But really, where we're hand holding the business owner is there's so much to it. We have to get the valuation done properly. We have to take the business to market. We have to market it. And then we have to spend a lot of time vetting the buyers coming in. So the owners, from my experience, they have a pretty good handle on the team. If they have an idea, we'll tell them if we think it's good or bad, but they'll lead on that. If somebody tells me that they're going to sit the employees down and tell them, I'll advise them against that. But ultimately, if they want to do that, they will. But I would advise them against it.
Okay. Understood. Understood. I'm sorry, Lloyd, back to you before we
No, no problem, because I got one more question. Of course, my question is completely on topic. Tell me about the coolest project that you worked on as in the engineering company. What was the most fun, the coolest, the best, most exciting project?
So we had a we actually we started out servicing private yachts, and then we were able to secure ourselves a government contract with a prime contractor. So we actually ended up in that's why we had pretty good growth in our business, because we ended up working with a ship builder that was commissioning government vessels. And then we were the warranty company, which nobody wanted. We couldn't advertise that because you're not supposed to have warranty on a brand new ship. But we were the warranty company, and we would send teams to Puerto Rico, Miami, and actually all over the US to do these warranty or engineering change jobs. And it was pretty interesting because we were dealing with the government.
Both Jimmy and I come from sailing backgrounds. We refer to
Oh.
those large motorboats as stink potters. This- all they do is stink up the environment. Somebody once described the art of sailing as the fine art of going slowly, going nowhere, slowly, and at great expense. And I think that pretty well covers it. I'll turn it over to Jimmy or Kobe or whoever wants to take it at this point in time. And I'll come back to you and we'll talk about some other things.
It's
Kobe,
yours.
you want it?
Yeah, I got quite a few questions. So,
That's not allowed.
yeah, so
Just throw them all out.
look, well, me right in front of the bus, but I'm taking them anyways. Now, anyway, another question for you. What's the biggest mistake that you see business owners make when trying to transition? Something they don't realize until it's too late.
Oh, okay. So there does come a point in time where it's too late to sell. And that's going to be the biggest mistake. And I've seen that on a handful of times. And that can be for different reasons. COVID was tough on some
Mhm.
businesses, and then some businesses had a boom. But COVID was tough because some of the people that were thinking about selling before COVID in 2019 went, oh no, I've just got to get through this. And they've come out the other side of COVID. And now, for whatever reason, it's probably too late for them to sell. I see a bit of that.
Have you seen on the flip side of that where, maybe a success story, any success story that stands out to you where a business not only transitions smoothly, but they thrive afterward?
Yeah. So there's a business that I sold that it was already very successful for 28 years, but through COVID, because of the nature of the industry, which I won't say for confidentiality, but because of the nature of the industry, just they had an uptick enough that when you looked at the 3 years of financials, the value of the business had increased. And they were able to sell. They had multiple offers They wanted to sell to their employees actually, but the employees didn't. They didn't want they weren't ready. They were older actually, so that would be why not. Yeah, they sold multiple offers over asking price, and they went with the buyers that they felt the most comfortable with.
And a business selling to their employees, this is a new concept for me. I've been an employee for a long time, and then I was a retail corporate manager for a long time, and never once had any of this information been considered to even come down to the regular employees as far as a business or being a part of the business or a part of a sale or anything like that. What do you think changed in society to where this is a little bit more common now?
So I think to your point, it's maybe there are people talking about it now. I just had a meeting at a bank last week. I went to a seminar, and this bank is the largest SBA lender in the US. And while they are writing loans for employees to buy businesses, they did tell us that for the particular department that we were talking to, that only 2% of the SBA loans that they write are employee buyouts. And I think what's happening is people like me and maybe the banks, they would love to do more of these transactions because the lenders were telling me that this is ideal for them. They don't have licensing issues. The employee they have experience in the sector. Now, to your question, why is this happening more? I don't know. Maybe people are talking about it because maybe the owners would like to. I know most owners would like to sell to a key person. So I'm not sure if any of you have any ideas on why it's being talked about more, but it's still a very slim slice of the businesses that are selling to employees.
In my experience with the ESOP, with the employee stock ownership plans, the advantage is the tax consequences because they do an evaluation and they do evaluation as to what the company is worth. And then they borrow that money from a bank. And because they set up a trust for the ESOP, there's no taxes. So when I sell my company, I have to pay taxes on the profit. But if
Mhm.
I do it through an ESOP, there's no taxes because it's a trust and the trust doesn't have to pay taxes. So the disadvantage is that the owner of the company has to work for some period of time because they usually have to sign personally for the bank loan.
Mm.
But to me, in my experience, it was the best way to sell a company, provided the owner was willing to work for the company for some period of time, usually another 10 to 15 years, if they're going to really do it right. So you got to get somebody who says, I'm going to work for the next 10 to 15 years, and then I'm going to get out of it. And if people make that decision early on, the ESOP is just an incredible way to sell the company in my experience. Do you find anybody that's interested in ESOPs these days, or are they pretty much gone out of style?
So there are people that specialize in ESOPs. So for me, what I've been seeing is so I have one case where a lady sold her business to her employees. She actually set her business up with this in mind. So over 5 years, she recruited people and then trained them, knowing that she would sell the business to them. And
Yes.
she actually did full owner financing. And she is being paid over 15 years, but she has retired. So she has set her team up to buy the business. And she has also set herself up with a very nice retirement plan of a 15
Sure.
year payment. And then the other option that we are discussing and explained about last week is the SVA lenders. They will, they will allow an employee. So if you wanted to buy your boss's business, you can put down 2.5% of the purchase price, which is not a lot of money because one of the things that happens is owners would love to sell to the employees, but they say they're not going to have the money and nobody's buying businesses with cash. Lot in this where I am in the small business space, people are using SBA funding. It's the most popular. So an employee can put down 2.5% and the business owner can hold a note for the 7.5%, which will equal the 10% down payment. And the business owner just has to be on standby for their payments for 2 years. But the employee, that's what they would need to do to buy that business.
And who guarantees the loan to the SBA? Is that the current owner or is that the new employees?
So it would be the employee buying business, where they do have the guarantees are if anybody is 20% owner or has a 20% ownership share, they would have to sign. But it's lender by lender. But at least you have the hurdle of the cash, the money isn't too bad. I think, mm, I don't know. Most people, if they really wanted it, could friends and family that down payment,
Makes
which
sense.
I think is surprising. And it's something that I want to focus on. And I've been talking to some of the lenders. I think where business brokers and consultants can help is making sure that you do a very thorough valuation and somehow be neutral, because I worked with an employee. He wanted to buy his boss's business, but I was only working with the employee, and we did the valuation, and the owner was like, no, get out of here, I want this. So everything stalled. So I think if an employee is going to try to approach their boss, A, you need really good rapport. And B, I think you need somebody neutral that can help to at least get the numbers figured out. So if anybody is out there thinking about that, it's just something to know.
Man, that brings me to something that I was thinking about as you were talking. I was thinking like for employees listening, maybe mid-level managers or anybody for that matter, you're talking a little bit about it, but what kind of a mindset or preparation do they need before they become owners themselves? Because I would think that you have to have yourself and your stuff together first before even considering that, as you pointed out with the one guy saying, no, I don't want you doing it.
Yeah. So this is one of the reasons that I was interested to speak with you guys, because just as I had explained to you when I promoted my first person, I think that your employee may be a key person, right? So he's a manager, he's been managing people, but management isn't the same as leadership. So when you take over the owner role, you're going to be the leader, which even if your key employee is your general manager and he's running your whole business, he can still say, oh, that's above my pay grade. That's an owner decision. But when you step into that ownership role, you're going to be the bad guy for everything and the good guy. But it's a completely different, it's a mindset shift, which is what you're saying. So I think before you even, in conjunction with getting into the financials, let's say, and speaking to your boss and having that ongoing dialogue, the preparation would need to happen in the exact same way that you prepare somebody to be a manager, or in the exact same way you develop somebody in a role and you give them more skills and you do training. It's going to require something similar. Otherwise, you'll run the risk of, yes, somebody taking over the business, but what if they're not ready for that responsibility and that leadership?
Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy.
I was going to ask that, look, what's your sweet spot? What is your ideal customer? What size of business? How many employees? If you had a steady stream of business, where would it be coming?
My sweet spot is the business owner that's doing 1 to 5 million in revenue, profitable. And I have several industries that I work in, and those tend to be professional services. I like the funeral space. I like home health. Businesses that are, I think because of my knowledge with hiring and how hard it is to hire good people, I can feel for those business owners, really service businesses.
I want to point out, Jimmy, I love that question, but I want to point out just to add in, look at how you already know what your target audience is for your business, like precisely. There's a lot of people that operate out there that cannot tell you what their customer base is, and you nailed it. And I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. And I'm going to interject a question. I was going to ask something different, but because you mentioned it, both Lloyd and I have family members that are in the home healthcare business. One of them, my contact, my niece and her husband are on the younger side of the spectrum. They're in their late 30s, early 40s. And Lloyd's contact is on the elder side. They're probably in their 50s and 60s. So yeah, I guess I just mentioned that because I would like to ask, in the case of my niece, when would you suggest that we refer her to you so that you can start planning their exit strategy? because they knowing that they're likely to be in the business for another 20 years. Should they start now? Should they wait until they're closer? Given your comment earlier about sometimes you can get committed as an employer or an owner that is transitioning, you may be committed to a contract for 10 to 15 years. So what would you recommend for them, especially if they're considering turning the company over to their employer?
So what I would recommend is, and this is something that I never thought about when I had my engineering business, and now looking back, I'm like, it's shocking. I would recommend getting a valuation done, and I would recommend having a valuation done annually because we all go for health checkups. Nobody skips their annual health check, but people will literally wait till they are a year or two away from retirement and they'll get a valuation done on their business. And then they will find out A, how valuations are done, and B, that their business isn't worth as much as they thought. So if you start now, you can understand your value today, and then you can build value into your business when you have the actual figures in front of you and you see how businesses are valued. So that's what I would recommend for anybody out there that has a business that's more than 10 years old.
Okay. And then my follow-up question to that is, what's your fee structure? How it sounds like there's different levels, right? There's probably a fee structure for the evaluation itself. There's a fee structure for your service and packaging the sale. So what's your general fee structure?
General fee structure says a fee for a general valuation, which would just be a range. It's kind of a quicker estimate that we can do. And then and it really depends on the business too, because what you have to think about, Jimmy, is a valuation for one business that has clean books, a good accountant, and a valuation for another business that everything's in a shoebox. They're going to be much more detailed. Do you have QuickBooks Online?
Right.
So there are ranges even in the pricing. So there is a lower fee that you can just get an estimate of where your business is at. Then there's a comprehensive detailed valuation. And then for the selling of the business, if somebody decides to list, that's a success fee. That actually is 12% of the sale. But we also have a self-service option, even for listing the business. And now with the services for having the employees buy the business, there's going to be different pricing too. So there's about 5 different price structures for different
Okay.
services.
And do you offer books that you've authored that can teach someone how to go through the process, or do you offer seminars or anything else that people could participate in to learn more?
Yes. So I've just started doing a weekly workshop online on Zoom. It's free every week on Thursday at 11 a.m. And it's an introduction to valuations and preparing to sell a business. And I'm in the process of writing a book. That's going to take a bit longer.
Great. Those are both significant revenue streams and lead magnets, right? So I'm glad the answer to both of those was yes. Lloyd?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about people that buy a business and then the first thing they do is change everything about it. Most notably restaurants. I've seen where somebody will come in and buy a very successful restaurant and then pay top value for it and then completely change the menu and fire all the people that everybody got used to that was in that. Do you counsel people on making changes or what kind of changes that they should make once they buy a business?
I don't tend to counsel the buy side. I will help the buyers to get through the transaction. So typically I'll be working for the business owner, the seller. The Usually though, so the answer is no, but the business owners will be concerned about that, right? I don't want somebody to come in here, buy my business and change everything. So part of the kind of this screening process when talking to buyers is really getting information from them and talking to them and getting a feel for what they would do with the business. And then that's part of pairing the business owner up with their ideal buyer, like trying to find somebody that won't change everything. Now, whether they do when they post closing, I don't know, but don't counsel the buyers, but certainly would be looking for people that want to keep things the same. And then the owners tend to be really good about advising the buyers. People love to talk about their businesses. So if the buyers just, whether that be an employee or somebody from the outside, if they just listen and take notes, they could just leave everything the same for 6 months and keep going.
Kobe, Dale had a question up and it was a really good question. Can you put that up and let's get Dale an answer? Because I love that question. There
You
it
knew
is.
I was coming right back to it, but yes, sir.
There you go. Dale's question is, what is your strongest advice to a business for sale on how they would communicate with their customers as opposed to their employees?
Okay, so there's a couple of ways that you can do this. So one business owner, and actually it was the business owner and the buyer, they made the decision together that they would not make any formal announcements. So the business just changed hands. Everything stayed the same. The employees obviously were well informed. There was a manager that was at the helm, so the transition wasn't obvious. And they actually just very gently, they didn't make any announcements. Another business that I've worked with, they sent notes out to it was a different type of business, but they sent notes out their customers, letting them know that they were going to be transitioning. This is as tricky as telling your employees. And sometimes if the word gets out, you have to be really careful when you're selling your business because people, wouldn't believe this, people will sign non-disclosure agreements and then they will go tell people that the business is for sale, or they'll call the owner. They'll try to go around the broker. I think so. The business that transitioned and didn't make an announcement, they were going to make an announcement. They were going to have a community barbecue. So I think it depends on what's your relationship with your clients. Do you have contract clients? Because if you have contract clients, you're going to have to talk to them. Are those contracts assignable? So it's really going to depend, Dale, on the types of clients, but very delicate because you don't want the community to get spooked.
Do most businesses, in your experience, do they keep the owner on for some kind of period of time under an employment contract? Or are they usually just, I want it, you get the heck out of here?
So usually when you list the business for sale, there will be a certain amount of time that is included. So there'll be a handover, a training period. It has been surprising when people have the handover period and then they just don't use it. I do see that. I think that there is that where people say that they want the handover, but then really when it comes, they've gone through all of this paperwork with the lender and it's their business now and they want to get on with it. Or you'll see it where the owner will stay on as a consultant. I haven't personally dealt with people staying on with employment contracts, but certainly as consultants or through a transition.
We got, we got another question coming up from Nancy, and I think this is more like a statement, and then her next one is a question, or maybe just comment on what she's saying. Is realizing how extraordinarily valuable the process and implementation portions are. How to get this widget to this customer effectively. It feels like the most important piece. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, very important. I would say that's one of the biggest things that when I talk to business owners, they will tell me they have processes. And then I will ask, where are they? And they'll say, oh, everybody knows. Mhm. So and then we have to have lots of difficult conversations with owners, respectful, difficult conversations. You then have to point out to them, but they're in everybody's head. So yes, if your processes and your procedures are written down, that adds value. That's going to make your business more valuable and it's going to make it more sellable.
Awesome. And then the next question she had was definitely neutral party needed. It's hard for owners to loosen their grip on the business they have developed from the ground up. And I think she was talking back when you were talking about how involved an employee and an employer should be together. And do you agree with her comment?
Yes, I do. And then something else as well that's if we're looking at employees wanting to buy the business, something that I caution business owners about is you got to have we've got to have some confidentiality paperwork. And then of course the risk is that the employee looks at the books, decides they don't want to buy it. And some companies show their books to their employees, some don't. So there's you definitely want to, I think even with an employee buyout where there's already a relationship, you do want to have that neutral party, as Nancy said.
Awesome.
One last question for me before we go into that portion of our podcast, which is called Shameless Self Promotion, which you should shamelessly take advantage of. Have you had experience with seller's remorse? Have you had a business owner that sold and then 6 months after they sold, they really wish they hadn't done that?
Yes, and I still see it actually. I know there's somebody that comes to mind and they they sold their business quite some time ago, and they still talk about it. And there is this is I think is really important. I was listening to a Dave Ramsey podcast, and somebody, I'm not a fan either way, but somebody had called in and said, Dave, should I sell my business? And he said, yes, if you have to have something else to do, in the sense of a real plan, not just I'm going to sell my business and retire. And even Dave Ramsey was saying that he knows lots of people who have sold their businesses, and on the golf course, they're talking about the good old days. And that's what I personally experienced. My dad didn't sell, he closed, but then the other person I'm thinking of sold, and still to this day talks about the business as if, and even
Yeah.
talks about maybe buying it back. So you've got to make sure you've got a retirement plan, like you're going to actually do something.
You're ready to move on. Okay, so we're going to go into shameless self-promotion. For you, you probably don't need to take advantage of it as much as a lot of our guests are, because you are blessed with the most, in my opinion, the most appealing accent in the world. I love the British accent and could sit and listen for hours. So you could just tell me BS for 3 days about selling my business, and I still go, wow, yeah, thank you, Colette. At this point, we just say, tell us a little bit about why someone should approach surestepbusiness.com and reach out to you, and then go through how they best get in touch with you, through the website, through social media.
Okay, perfect. Yes, there's my website there, surestepbusiness.com. You can reach me there. I am very active on LinkedIn, and also I'm on all the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube as well. And I do have a free, what I don't want to say like a free, I designed a self-assessment. It's very quick, and it is to help you to know if you're actually ready to sell your business. So there's more to a business than just the price. So there are going to be certain things in this assessment. It takes you 60 seconds. It's 12 questions. So it's very general, but it'll give you a PDF report instantly. So if you like that, you can just come to the website and you'll be able to get that. And then, as I said, I also do every Thursday at 11 a.m. I do a free weekly webinar. I'm not selling on it. It's an introduction to valuing a business and preparing it to sell. It's purely educational. Of course, it does get us connected, but I'm not selling on that webinar. And then I do very detailed valuations. I really enjoy doing valuations. And just a word of caution for everybody. Most business brokers will do a free valuation for you, so you can take advantage of that. But be mindful. That is a pipeline for us to get business. So make sure that if you get a valuation done, it's done really well. If someone tells you that they just need 3 years of tax returns, they don't. We need more than that. Just be prepared to get some paperwork together to get a proper valuation. Be patient with the process.
Very good. Lloyd, do you have any other questions for Colette?
Not at this time. I think that we pretty much answered them all. I was curious to know, with regards to the businesses that you have counseled, is there one particular business where the sales have been more successful than the others, where you find that more people are happy or that it works better?
And I think once somebody decides that they're going to sell their business, the happiest business owners are the ones that are getting the most interest and the most buyers looking at their business. And that really comes down to how good the business is. The cash flow is important. So there's no way around that. We do have all of the other stuff. We have all of the employees and the customers. But at the end of the day, if the cash flow is tight, the business owner is probably going to be unhappy because you're not going to have that much interest. That's why, to saying when should somebody get ready, just starting to get valuations done, and then you can get advice on how to build that value. So I would say happiest business owners are the ones that I've had a business go to market and taken hundreds of inquiries over a weekend. And then another business has gone to market and had not so much interest. Industries make a difference too. There are some industries, obviously, which are a little tougher nowadays.
And did you pick the funeral home industry as one of your emphases because people are dying to get into?
Well, such a good
You're
point. I
funny.
didn't hear,
You're
I didn't
so
hear
funny.
that. Wow.
Yes.
Hey.
Man, Jimmy caught me off guard with that, bro.
Going.
That's so funny. I'm gonna ask her. I am gonna You just made me forget everything that I was just going to ask. Well, but I'm going to start with, is there a final message of encouragement you'd like to leave with our listeners, whether they're business owners, future buyers, or thinking about the next chapter?
Yes. I would love to leave the word of encouragement. Look at your team, see if you can develop them. I'm the lady that I mentioned to you that sold her business to her employees. I'm not saying if you mention to a business broker that someone 100% seller finance, they're going to say no. But this lady is very happy, but she prepared for it. And she's really close to her team. Just think, look internally, especially if you have time. But then maybe the opposite of that, that people may be driving you crazy.
Yeah.
And maybe you're burnt out. But on the encouragement side, I think, yeah, really look at your team because you can sell your business to them. And I'm going to be focusing more on that because I love the idea of that. I think most of us I talked to the lady that sold her business. I said, how do we get this message out there? And she said, we're just going to have to do it through education, through letting people know that, hey, some people have done it. And I may actually interview her on my YouTube channel. So maybe we could hear her story.
Yeah, I think this is all incredible and stuff. I think it's very important for people to see this. There's a lot of different dynamics in how people work and make money nowadays. And I don't see why this shouldn't be on the table for everybody. Jimmy, that's all I have.
Great. We're looking forward to directing prospective clients your way. Hopefully someday we'll have you back on our show. Dale had asked the question, do you take vacations these days now that you've gone into this new venture? And you said that you didn't take vacations while you're establishing your engineering business. So I'm hoping that you were able to get enough out of it that you can actually take a vacation once in a while now.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
All right. So yeah. So
Ready to take us out?
yeah, it's been another great week. Hopefully, like Jimmy said, we'd love to have you back. Hopefully it's good enough. We can have that discussion later. But great interview. I learned a lot today, which is always good. It's hard learning around Lloyd and Jimmy. So anyway, hey, we like to have fun here. It's Great Employees Matter. Thanks for joining us. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like the content and let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We're always open. We're a moving target. So have a great week and we'll see you next week.
Always be a gem. Thank you,
Oh,
everybody.
thank you.